This video is sponsored by the UK's highest rated motorsport simulator centre, Simply Race, but more on them later in the video. There are many good racing drivers, but very few truly great ones. But what separates them apart from the rest of us? What allows them to reach this upper level, raising their head above the rest? I've studied the best drivers from many racing disciplines and combined it with my own racing experience to compile this list. I haven't seen a truly great driver without all 8 of the things on this list, so pay close attention if you want to be in this elite group. The first thing is that great drivers almost always nail their race starts. They see the start of a race as an opportunity rather than a risk. They know the field is packed closer together than at any other time and always look to use this once per race situation to their advantage. But how do they do this? Well, they have a plan. Now, having a plan sounds simple, but you'd be amazed at how many normal drivers just enter every race with the attitude of just going with the flow. The best drivers know where they are starting, who's around them, the track conditions, the championship situation, and how much risk they need to take. They use all this information to compile a detailed plan of attack for the first lap that they will rehearse in their minds numerous times before even arriving on the grid. They'll know exactly where they are going to place themselves on every part of the circuit for at least the first half of the first lap. They may even have backup plans should the situation change as the lap unfolds. The reason this plan is so effective is because by the time the driver arrives on the grid, they have effectively done this race start tens of times, whilst everyone else is experiencing it for the first time. This means they can act decisively without hesitation, allowing their plan to come to life. The best drivers will also refine their race start procedure. They make sure to know the ideal preparation and tyre warming procedure to execute the best race start and first lap. Also, if it's a standing start, they make sure they are completely familiar with the whole starting procedure and have done as many practice starts as possible to get their muscle memory tuned for consistently great launches. For the rolling starts, they'll know exactly where the start zone is. They'll make sure they're close to the driver ahead, and they're always poised ready for the start with their game plan still in mind. With all these things in motion, they will almost always start the race on the front foot. Next on the list is mistakes. Now, you'd be forgiven for thinking that the great drivers don't make mistakes like the rest of us do, but this simply isn't the case. The difference with the great drivers, however, is that they make far fewer mistakes than us mere mortals, and each of these mistakes are smaller and have less consequence. The way I like to think about this is the difference between an average driver and a good driver is how many mistakes they make. But the difference between a good driver and a great driver is the size of those mistakes. But what do I mean by this? Well, let's think about the classic mistake of braking too late into a corner. An average driver may do this 4 times per race, costing them half a second each time for an overall loss of 2 seconds. A good driver may do this just twice in a race, but each time costing them half a second for a total of 1 second loss. But a great driver may still make this mistake twice, but it'll only cost them 2/10 each time, with an overall loss of just 0.4 seconds. This is an oversimplification, of course. However, if we extrapolate this to every aspect of a race, from braking too late to how many failed overtakes you make, from hitting a curb you didn't mean to, or the odd oversteer moment, every single mistake and the size of each mistake adds up to what could be tens of seconds, minutes even, over a race for 2 drivers who may have very similar fastest lap times. Making fewer and smaller mistakes can be achieved through a combination of mental discipline and deliberate practice, concentrating on consistency, not just one lap pace. Overtaking is the next area where great drivers shine. The one overriding theme of the way great drivers overtake is their deadly decisiveness. You almost never see them make a move where they back out halfway, and you'll rarely see them make an optimistic move somewhere risky on track. They will also plan their overtakes, like a lion hunts its prey. They will stalk their victim, analysing their moves, calculating, searching for a weakness. Once they spot a weakness, they will plan an attack and execute with precision. Most average drivers will either wait for the driver ahead to make a mistake or decide to dive up the inside at a moment's notice. This can and does lead to successful moves, but the risk is greater and the move is likely to be less clinical. Great drivers know where and how to overtake, but they are also experts at knowing when and where not to overtake. Making one brash move can cost you far more than waiting a couple more corners or laps. They will use this time to plan their attack. Simply Race Milton Keynes has 15 triple screen simulators for you to be able to race against all your friends. They can host groups of 1 to 100 people for every occasion and do junior parties too. Or you can join one of their competitive race events. For 10% off your next group booking, use the code ALPHALIVE10. Anyway, back to the video. Pressure. We've all felt it. the weight of expectation weighing down on you. The best drivers just seem to shake it off, like water off a duck's back. Like the stories you hear about Max Verstappen playing FIFA in the back of his motorhome just minutes before the start of an F1 session. But how do they just brush it off? Well, there's a lot to this. It's almost a whole video subject in itself, but here are some key things that we can observe. First of all, the best drivers generally treat the biggest events just like any other race. They have confidence in their ability to win races. They've done it before. Why should this big event be any different? It sounds easy when you look at it from their perspective, but of course, this confidence doesn't appear overnight. It usually comes from years of consistent practice, good results and improvement, and unfortunately, there's no shortcut for that. But there are some things that you can implement to help you reach this level of confidence sooner than others. Much like the best drivers, you should drive every race the same. Once you're on track, the race is just the same as every other, whether it's your local club round or the F1 Championship finale. All you can do is race the drivers around you to the best of your ability, and putting additional pressure on yourself is unlikely to make you perform at your best. Try and build a consistent and easy to follow routine before a race and over a whole race weekend. Change as little as you can about your routine for the big event, as it would just serve to unsettle your mind and not allow you to fully relax and get the results you want. Try and cultivate a culture and team around you that works for you, not against you. This can be hard to do, especially as a young driver, but you want to aim for a happy, healthy and optimistic environment around you, so you're able to be energized and positive more often than not, as this is conducive to good performance for most people. The fourth thing you can do now is be your own biggest supporter. Everyone knows that little voice in your head, you know the one. Sometimes they're nice, sometimes they're helpful, sometimes they criticize, and sometimes they're just downright mean. To a certain extent, you can control the narrative of this voice, or at the very least, only listen to the helpful parts of what they have to say. This, of course, is easier said than done, but over time, you can train it to make you stronger and more resilient. If this voice is always cheering you on, encouraging you, and picking you back up when you get knocked down, it helps build your confidence, and this is what leads you to being able to deal with the pressure that will come with the biggest races of your career. This sport doesn't owe you anything. It beats you up and everyone else is trying to beat you too. So you need to be there in your own corner, not fighting against yourself like everyone else is. Building a weekend and a championship. Great drivers build a race weekend and a championship like a master craftsman. You may turn up on a practice day, drive the first session or two to get back in the groove, then maybe make a change to the vehicle to see if you can find a little bit more lap time. Do a few more sessions making random tweaks here and there, and before you know it, it's qualifying. The best drivers are plotting their weekend from before they even get in the driving seat. They know the weather forecast for the weekend, how the circuit is likely to improve, what setup they will need, and how that may change as the meeting progresses. Then from session 1, they are thinking what they can change in their driving or on the vehicle that is likely to give them success come the main event. But these improvements are not just limited to overall speed. It might be how they can preserve their tyres more, make the car more drivable, have better straight line speed for overtaking. The list goes on. Everything they do from before they arrive at the circuit is with the overall goal in the forefront of their mind. The same goes for building a championship campaign. Every race is merely a building block for the championship, and sometimes consolidation of a result is more valuable to a championship than chancing a crash for the lure of a single extra race win. You build a race weekend and a championship in unison. Everything a great driver does is with their end goal in mind. What's the one thing that all drivers on every grid has in common? They all have 4 identical tyres. Making these tyres work at their optimum for the whole race is key to success. The great drivers know how to bring their tyres into the best operating window quickly and make them last the duration of the race and the race weekend. The great drivers always have a deeper understanding of what they need to do and what not to do with their tyres to make them work as well as they can in each and every session. The best drivers can be described as tyre whisperers, being on top of pressure selection, scrubbing and heating the tyre, preserving it through its racing life, keeping it activated during slowdown periods, and knowing how to drive using worn tyres. This is usually at the most critical point of a race weekend, in the dying laps at the end of the race. To be a great driver, you must know your tyres inside out. Every world-class driver was once a rookie, a novice. We all start somewhere. But how do the great drivers bridge the gap between novice and greatness? The answer? Purpose. Everything a great driver does is on purpose. On face value, this is obvious, but there's value when you dig deeper. When you ask a normal driver why they do pretty much anything, they'll usually answer with, "Oh, I'm not sure," or oh, I've always done it like that, or, well, that's what everyone else does. The great drivers do everything, and I mean everything, with purpose. Why do you use that curb? Because it helps turn the kart. Why did you pass them at that corner? Because they had poor grip in the low-speed corners. Why did you have that for lunch? Because if I eat a burger, it makes me tired. The great drivers know exactly why they do everything. They have self-evaluated every area of their driving, their preparation, their setup. Every single thing they do is deliberate, calculated, and has a purpose. The purpose of winning them more races and championships. The most important word to a great driver is why. The more answers you have to this question, the more complete you will be as a driver. Every great driver in the history of motorsport has their own way, their own unique flair and brilliance, but they all share one trait: raw speed. It's no secret that the great drivers must have an innate speed to consistently qualify at the front, and when necessary, unleash this speed to hunt down competition or drive away from the rest of the field. This speed is a combination of natural ability and learned technique. Talent is important, no doubt, but arguably more important is refining whatever talent you have through deliberate, focused practice and repetition. Seat time is often limited, so make the most of any time you have using some of the previous points. So that concludes the 8 things that separate us versus the great drivers. Comment below which of these points you're going to be working on specifically this season. And while you're down there, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss our next video. If you concentrate on all of these 8 things, you never know, you could become one of the greats of the sport. A reminder that you and your friends can get some seat time together in a fun and friendly setting at Simply Race with a 10% discount when using the code ALPHALIVE10 at checkout. Click the link in the description to book your session.